People think this job is about the law. They think it's about statutes, ordinances, and the cold, hard ink in a rule book. But after 30 years on this bench, looking down at the faces of the people of Providence, I can tell you that's only half the story. The law is black and white, but life? Life is a messy, complicated shade of gray. You sit here long enough, and you learn to hear what people aren't saying. You learn to see the difference between a criminal who breaks the rules because they don't care and a human being who breaks the rules because they're breaking apart. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind where the rain hits the courthouse windows like a handful of gravel. The air inside was heavy, smelling of wet wool and anxiety. I had already gone through a dozen cases, speeding tickets, noise complaints, the usual rhythm of the city. I was tired. My clerk, Inspector Quinn, looked ready to go home. But there was one file left on the top of the stack, a thick one, the kind of file that usually means trouble. "Calling case number 404, the clerk announced, his voice echoing slightly in the wood-paneled room. "The City of Providence versus Marcus Cole." I adjusted my glasses and opened the folder. The first thing that hit me was the number. It wasn't just a fine. It was a financial death sentence for most people in this city. $5,250. I blinked and looked again, just to be sure. $5,250 in accumulated citations, late fees, and penalties. Speeding. Failure to stop at a red light. Parking in a commercial loading zone. Expired inspection sticker. It read like a rap sheet of someone who treated the roads of Providence like their personal racetrack. "Mr. Cole is present, Your Honor," the bailiff said. I looked up, expecting to see a teenager with an attitude, or maybe a businessman who thought his time was more important than public safety. I prepared my stern judge face the look I give when I'm about to lecture someone on responsibility. But when Marcus Cole stepped up to the podium, the lecture died in my throat. He was a man in his late 30s, but he carried himself like he was carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. He was wearing a faded blue mechanic's uniform with a name patch that was unraveling at the corner. There was grease under his fingernails that no amount of scrubbing could probably get out, but it was his eyes that stopped me. They were red-rimmed, sunken deep into dark circles that spoke of a kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. He wasn't standing tall with defiance. He was leaning against the podium as if it was the only thing keeping him upright. He held a crumpled baseball cap in hands that were trembling just slightly, like the vibration of an engine running on fumes. Beside him stood the city prosecutor, Mr. Henderson. Henderson was a good man, efficient, by the book. He loved the data. He loved the clarity of the system. To him, Marcus Cole wasn't a man. He was a statistic of non-compliance. "Your Honor," Henderson began, straightening his tie, "the defendant has a record of flagrant disregard for traffic laws over the past 6 months. We have 12 separate citations. We have camera footage of him running red lights at 3 a.m. We have parking violations in downtown loading zones. This isn't a mistake. This is a pattern of reckless behavior. The city is asking for the full judgment plus court costs." I looked from the crisp, typed list in Henderson's hand to the man shaking in the cheap blue uniform. The data said reckless. The man standing in front of me screamed desperate. My gut twisted. That familiar feeling, the instinct that tells you the paperwork is lying to you, started to creep up my spine. "Mr. Cole," I said, keeping my voice neutral, testing the waters. "You've heard the charges. $5,000. That's a lot of money. Do you have a lawyer representing you today?" Marcus looked up. He didn't look at me immediately. His eyes darted around the room first, like he was looking for an exit that didn't exist. When he finally met my gaze, I saw fear, pure, unadulterated panic masked by fatigue. "No, Your Honor," he said. His voice was raspy, dry. "No lawyer. I can't afford one. I barely could afford the gas to get here." "The city says you're reckless, Mr. Cole," I continued, leaning forward, studying his face. "Running red lights. Speeding. Ignoring parking signs. Are you trying to hurt someone out there? Are you driving a getaway car?" It was a standard question, usually meant to provoke a denial or an excuse. But Marcus just lowered his head, staring at his grease-stained boots. "No, Judge, he whispered, I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm just trying to make it to the next shift. The next shift? I asked. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 2 p.m. You're dressed for work now. What shift are we talking about? He took a breath, a shaky inhale that seemed to rattle in his chest. This is job number 2, Your Honor. I just finished at the warehouse. I start at the garage in an hour. Then I do the delivery route at night. I paused. The courtroom went quiet. The scratching of the clerk's pen stopped. 3 jobs? I asked. Yes, sir, he said. 3. 3 jobs, I repeated. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. In this economy, holding down 1 job is a fight. Holding down 3 isn't employment. It's a marathon without a finish line. It's a kind of indentured servitude to the clock. I looked over at Mr. Henderson. He didn't blink. He didn't shift his stance. To him, the number of jobs was irrelevant details. The number of tickets was the only math that mattered in his world. Mr. Henderson, I said, keeping my eyes on the prosecutor, did your office inquire about the defendant's employment status before seeking the maximum penalty? Did anyone ask why a man would be driving across the city at all hours of the day and night? Henderson stiffened, adjusting the lapel of his suit. No, Your Honor. The statutes don't require an employment history for traffic adjudication. The violations are clear. The camera footage is unambiguous. Motive doesn't negate the infraction. Maybe it doesn't negate it, I muttered, turning back to the man trembling at the podium. But it certainly explains it. And in this courtroom, explanation matters. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking in the silence. I picked up the citation list again, but this time, I wasn't looking at the violations. I was looking at the timestamps. Walk me through it, Mr. Cole, I said. Because looking at this sheet, I see a red light violation at 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. I see a speeding ticket 45 inches, a 25 zone at 6:45 a.m. on a Friday. I see parking violations in a commercial loading zone at 12:30 p.m. To Mr. Henderson, this looks like chaos. To me, it looks like a timeline. Help me understand the timeline. Marcus wiped his greasy hands on his pants again, a nervous tick. He looked exhausted just thinking about it. I get up at 3 a.m. Your Honor, he said, his voice quiet. I have to be at the warehouse by 3:30. That's across town. If I'm 1 minute late, they dock me an hour. If I'm late 3 times, I'm fired. That ticket, the red light. He paused, swallowing hard. I was running late. My car wouldn't start. I knew if I missed that light, I'd lose the shift. I didn't see anyone coming. I took the chance. You took a chance because you were afraid of losing your job, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. That job pays the rent. And the speeding ticket at 6:45 a.m.? I asked. That's when the shift ends, Marcus explained. I have 45 minutes to get from the warehouse to the mechanic shop on the south side. Traffic starts building up by 6:30. I have to change in the car, usually while I'm driving. I was going too fast, because the shop manager said if I wasn't there by 7:30 to open the bay doors, don't bother coming in. I looked at Henderson. You see that, Mr. Prosecutor? That's not joyriding. That's panic. That's a man running a race he can't win. Henderson cleared his throat. Your Honor, with all due respect, the speed limit exists for public safety. Being late for work doesn't give anyone the right to endanger pedestrians. I know what the speed limit is for, I snapped, a little sharper than I intended. I'm not excusing the act. I'm trying to understand the actor. I looked back at Marcus. So, you work the warehouse, then the mechanic shop. That brings us to the afternoon. These parking tickets. 4 of them, all in the same commercial zone on Broad Street, all between 12 p.m. and 12:30 p.m. You're parking in a loading zone meant for delivery trucks. Why? Is that where you get lunch? For the first time, Marcus looked ashamed. He stared down at the wood grain of the podium, his shoulders hunching inward. No, sir, he said. I don't eat lunch. Then what are you doing on Broad Street at noon? I asked. Are you running errands? Meeting friends? I'm checking on them, he whispered. Checking on who? My kids, he said. The words cracked. My 3 kids. Their school is on the corner of Broad. My lunch break at the shop is 30 minutes. It takes me 10 minutes to drive there, 10 minutes to drive back. That leaves me 10 minutes to run to the fence at recess and make sure they're okay. Make sure they have their coats. Make sure they're still there. The room went deadly silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. You use your lunch break to watch your kids at recess? I asked, my voice softening. Their mom left 2 years ago, Your Honor, Marcus said, tears finally spilling over onto his dirty cheeks. She just left. It's just me. I can't afford after-school care. I can't afford a babysitter. I just need to see them. I park in the loading zone because it's the only spot close enough to the fence where I can see the playground. I'm there for 5 minutes, tops. I just need to know they're safe. I looked at the stack of parking tickets. Each one was $100. $400 for 20 minutes of peace of mind. $400 for a father trying to be a father from the other side of a chain-link fence. I looked at Henderson. He was staring at his file, refusing to meet my eyes. Mr. Cole, I said slowly, you're telling me you haven't eaten a midday meal in 6 months because you're spending that time standing at a school fence? I eat when I can, Judge, he said. Usually something from the vending machine at the warehouse. But they need to know I'm watching. They need to know I didn't leave, too. That hit me. It hit me hard. This wasn't about traffic. This was about trauma. And the third job? I asked, dreading the answer. When does that happen? After the kids go to sleep, he said. I have a neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She sits with them from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. I deliver food. DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever rings first. That pays for the electricity. That pays for the gas to get to the other 2 jobs. I did the math in my head. 3 a.m. wake up, 2 a.m. finish. 1 hour, I said. You sleep for 1 hour? On good nights, he said. Sometimes I just sleep in the car between deliveries. I closed the file. The $5,000 figure glared up at me. It wasn't just a fine. It was an impossibility. It was a weight that would crush this man. And if it crushed him, it crushed those 3 kids waiting by the fence. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice low, you called this man reckless. You said he had a flagrant disregard for the law. Do you still stand by that characterization? Henderson shifted his weight. He was a prosecutor, but he wasn't a monster. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, I held up a hand. Wait, I said. Before you answer, I want to see the footage. The footage, Your Honor? Henderson asked, surprised. The red light, I said. 3:15 a.m. You said you have it. Play it. I needed to see it. I needed to see if Marcus Cole was driving like a maniac or driving like a man running for his life. Because in my courtroom, the difference is everything. The bailiff dimmed the lights. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life, casting a pale, ghostly glow over the courtroom. We were all watching the same thing, a grainy, black and white feed from a traffic camera at the intersection of Elm and Washington. The timestamp in the corner read 3:15 and 2 seconds a.m. The streets were empty, not just quiet, desolate. It was the kind of emptiness you only see in a city that's holding its breath before the dawn. The rain was visible even on the low-quality tape, slashing through the cone of the streetlights like static. Then, Marcus's car appeared. It wasn't the sleek, speeding missile Mr. Henderson had described. It was a beat-up sedan, a 98 or maybe a 99, with a headlight that flickered and a tailpipe puffing out gray smoke. It moved sluggishly, like an old beast of burden that was tired of walking. As it approached the intersection, the traffic light overhead turned from green to yellow, then to a stark, unforgiving red. The car didn't blow through. It didn't accelerate. I watched the brake lights flare bright white on the monochrome screen. The car hesitated. It came to a rolling crawl, almost a complete stop. I could see the silhouette of the driver's head turning left, then right, checking, verifying. There was no cross traffic. There were no pedestrians. There was nothing but wet asphalt and the night. Then the car rolled through. Slow, deliberate. Pause it, I said. The image froze. The car was halfway through the intersection, a lonely metal box in a sea of empty concrete. I turned to the prosecutor. "Mr. Henderson," I said, keeping my voice low, "you used the word reckless. You said flagrant disregard. Look at that screen. Tell me what you see." Henderson stood up, but he didn't look at the screen. He looked at his notes. "I see a vehicle entering an intersection against a red signal, Your Honor. That is the definition of the violation." "I know the definition," I countered. "I'm asking about the reality. I see a man at 3 a.m. on a deserted street who slowed down, checked for safety, and made a decision because he was terrified of being 2 minutes late to a job that pays him minimum wage. I don't see a danger to society. I see a man trapped between a red light and a pink slip. I signaled the bailiff to kill the feed. The lights came back up, harsh and stinging. Marcus was rubbing his eyes, unable to look at the frozen image of his own desperation. "Let's talk about the parking tickets," I said, shifting gears. "The ones on Broad Street. The ones you got while watching your children through a fence. Mr. Henderson, do we have photos of the infractions?" "We do," Henderson said, handing a new stack of papers to the bailiff. I took them. They were standard parking enforcement photos, close-ups of the license plate, wide shots of the car next to the commercial loading-only sign. But I looked closer. In the background of the third photo, through the chain-link fence of the schoolyard, there was a blur of movement. Children, recess. And in the reflection of the car's side mirror, caught by accident by the parking officer's camera, was Marcus. He wasn't sitting in the car listening to the radio. He wasn't napping. He was leaning against the hood, his face pressed against the wire mesh of the fence, looking in. He wasn't parking. He was visiting. "Mr. Cole," I said, holding up the photo, "how much do you make at the warehouse?" $12 an hour, sir," he said. "And the mechanic shop?" 15. I pulled a calculator out of my desk drawer. The keys clicked loudly in the silence. $5,250, I said, punching in the numbers. At an average of $13.50 an hour, that is roughly 388 hours of labor. If you work 12 hours a day, every day, without a single day off, that is 32 days of your life, an entire month of work. Not to pay for rent, not to pay for food, not to buy your children clothes, but to pay the city of Providence for the privilege of driving to work to earn the money to pay the city. I dropped the calculator on the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. "We are asking you to starve," I said, my voice rising just a fraction, "so that we can balance our budget. Is that justice, Mr. Henderson? Or is that usury?" Henderson looked uncomfortable. He loosened his tie. "Your Honor, the law doesn't scale fines based on income. If we make exceptions for hardship, the system collapses. The fines are a deterrent." "A deterrent?" I asked, leaning over the bench. "Do you think this man needs to be deterred from working 3 jobs? Do you think he needs to be deterred from checking on his motherless children? A deterrent assumes the person has a choice. What choice did he have at 3 a.m.? Lose his job or run a light? What choice did he have at noon? Leave his kids alone or park in a loading zone?" I looked at Marcus. He had stopped shaking. Now, he just looked defeated. A man who had run out of fight. "Mr. Cole," I asked gently, "if I uphold these fines today, what happens?" He looked me in the eye, and for the first time, I saw the bottom of the well. "I lose the car, Judge," he said simply. "If I lose the car, I can't get to the warehouse. I lose that job. I can't do the deliveries. I lose that income. If I lose the income, we lose the apartment. We're on the street. It's a domino, sir. You push this one over, they all fall." He didn't say it with anger. He said it like he was reading a weather report, a forecast of a storm he couldn't stop. "I can't let that happen," I said. "Not in my courtroom." I turned back to Henderson. "Mr. Prosecutor, I want you to look at something. Look at the date on the first ticket. The very first one that started this avalanche. Henderson flipped through his file. October 14th, Your Honor. October 14th, I repeated. Mr. Cole, what happened on October 14th? Marcus closed his eyes. That was the day the child support payments stopped coming, he said. My ex-wife, she cut contact. That was the day I realized I was doing it all alone. The day the panic started, I said. I looked out at the gallery. A few people were wiping their eyes. The stenographer had stopped typing, her hands hovering over the keys. Mr. Henderson, I said, the city wants its pound of flesh. I understand that. But I'm looking at a man who has nothing left on the bone. I picked up my gavel. It felt heavy in my hand, heavier than usual. I knew what the law required me to do, but I also knew what my conscience was screaming at me to do. Mr. Cole, I said, bring me your license. He froze. My license, sir? Yes. Bring it up here. He walked slowly to the bench, his boots scuffing the floor. He handed me the piece of plastic. It was worn, the edges peeling. I looked at the photo. It was Marcus, but 5 years younger. His face was fuller then. He was smiling. I looked from the photo to the man standing before me. The city had taken that smile. You're a good father, Mr. Cole, I said. I can see that. But you're a tired father, and tired men make mistakes. The question is, should those mistakes cost you your life? I looked at Henderson. I'm ready to rule on this, unless the city has anything else to add. Henderson looked at Marcus, then at the photo of the kids by the fence in his hand. He took a deep breath. No, Your Honor, Henderson said quietly. The city submits. Good, I said, because I have a few questions for the city. I have questions for the city, I repeated, turning my gaze from the worn driver's license back to the prosecutor. But more importantly, I have a question for the conscience of this court. I picked up the stack of parking citations, the ones issued on Broad Street. I fanned them out like a losing hand of cards. Mr. Henderson, I began, my voice steady. The law is a rigid thing. It sees a car parked in a loading zone, and it sees a violation. It doesn't see why. It doesn't see a father trying to catch a glimpse of his children because he can't afford a phone call, let alone a lawyer. But I see it. And if I penalize this man for loving his children, then I am not a judge. I am just a debt collector in a black robe. I looked down at Marcus. He was gripping the podium so hard his knuckles were white. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner to pull the lever. Mr. Cole, I said, I am dismissing the parking tickets. All of them. Marcus's head snapped up. Sir? You heard me, I said. Parking in a loading zone requires commercial intent or negligence. You had neither. You were acting in the capacity of a guardian, ensuring the safety of minors. In my courtroom, that is not a crime. That is a duty. Dismissed. I stamped the first pile of papers. The sound was loud, definitive. Thud. Now, I continued, picking up the speeding ticket and the red light violation. These are harder. Public safety is paramount. You ran a red light. You sped. Those are facts. Marcus flinched. He knew this was the other shoe dropping. The parking tickets were hundreds of dollars. The moving violations were thousands. But, I said, pausing for effect, the law also recognizes something called the necessity defense. It is rarely used. It is usually reserved for escaping a fire or rushing a dying man to the hospital. But I look at your life, Mr. Cole, 3 jobs, 1 hour of sleep, the crushing weight of poverty, and I see a fire. I see a man trying to outrun a collapse that would destroy his family. I looked at the monitor where the ghostly footage of his car had been. I saw a man stop at that red light, I said. I saw a man check for safety. I didn't see recklessness. I saw exhaustion. And while I cannot condone breaking traffic laws, I cannot in good conscience crush a man who is already broken. I looked at Henderson. Mr. Prosecutor, does the state object if I dismiss these charges based on exigent circumstances of survival? Henderson looked at Marcus, then at me. He closed his folder. The state has no objection, Your Honor. In fact, the state recommends it. Then it is done, I said. Thud. Dismissed. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was light, like oxygen rushing back into a room. $5,250, I said, reduced to zero. Marcus didn't move. He couldn't. He just stood there, his mouth slightly open, tears streaming freely now, carving clean lines through the grease on his face. He looked like he wanted to fall down. "Thank you," he choked out. "Thank you, Judge. You saved me. You really saved me." "I didn't save you, Marcus," I said gently. "I just took the boot off your neck. You're the one running the marathon." I started to organize the papers, ready to call the next case. But something stopped me. I looked at Marcus again. He was relieved, yes. But he was still skinny. He was still exhausted. He was still wearing a uniform that was falling apart. Dismissing the ticket stopped the bleeding, but it didn't heal the wound. He turned to leave, grabbing his crumpled hat. "Mr. Cole," I called out. "Wait, come back here." He froze, panic flickering back into his eyes. Did I do something wrong, Judge?" "No," I said. "But we aren't finished. I asked you about your lunch break earlier. You said you haven't eaten a midday meal in 6 months. "That's right, sir." "And you said you have 45 minutes between the warehouse and the shop." "Yes, sir." I reached under the bench. Usually, this is where I keep my water, but today I pulled out something else. It was a small, wooden box. The Philanthropy Fund. It's money people send in strangers from around the world who watch these proceedings online to help people who need a hand up, not a handout. "You pushed yourself to the brink to pay the city," I said. "You starved yourself to watch your kids. Today, the court is going to order a new sentence." I opened the box. I pulled out a handful of cash. I didn't count it, but I knew it was enough. Enough for gas. Enough for groceries. Enough for a moment of breath. "Mr. Cole," I said, holding out the money, "I am ordering you to take this, and I am sentencing you to go eat lunch. A real lunch, not a vending machine cracker, not a candy bar. You are going to sit down for 20 minutes, and you are going to eat a hot meal. That is a court order. Do you understand?" Marcus stared at the money. His hands were shaking so hard he couldn't reach for it. I can't take that, Judge," he whispered. "I'm a man. I work. I can't take charity." "It's not charity, Marcus," I said, my voice firm. "It's an investment. If you collapse, those 3 kids lose their father. We need you strong. We need you standing. Take the money." He stepped forward slowly. He reached out with a hand scarred by labor and took the bills. He looked at them like they were foreign objects. "Go eat," I said, smiling for the first time that day. "And, Mr. Cole, one more thing." He looked up, eyes wide. "You said your ex-wife left 2 years ago," I said. "You said you're doing this all alone." "Yes, sir." "You're wrong," I said. "You're not alone anymore. Look behind you." Marcus turned around. I pointed to the back of the courtroom. When the case started, the gallery was half empty. Just the usual mix of defendants and lawyers. But while we were talking, while the story was unfolding, the doors had opened quietly. Standing in the back wasn't just the public. Standing there was Officer Miller, the man who had issued the speeding ticket. Standing there was the court clerk who had processed the paperwork. And standing there, looking nervous but determined, was a woman I recognized from the neighborhood. "Mrs. Gable?" I asked. "The neighbor who watches the kids?" The woman in the back nodded, clutching her purse. "I heard he was in court, Judge," she called out. I drove down. "I wanted to tell you. He's a good man. He pays me when he can't even pay himself." I looked at Marcus. He was sobbing now, his shoulders heaving. "You see, Mr. Cole," I said, "Providence is a big city, but it's a small town. People see you. We see you." I banged the gavel. Case dismissed. "Good luck, Mr. Cole." Marcus wiped his face, nodded to me, nodded to Mrs. Gable, and walked out of the courtroom. He walked out a free man. He walked out with money in his pocket. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd fixed a small injustice and we'd all move on. I was wrong. The cameras were rolling. And the internet was watching. I've seen videos go viral before. Usually, it's because someone yelled at me, or because a defendant said something funny, or because I lost my temper. But the clip of Marcus Cole didn't spread because it was loud. It spread because it was quiet. It spread because, for 6 minutes, the world stopped spinning and watched a man break open. It spread because everyone, whether they live in Providence or Paris, knows what it feels like to be one paycheck away from disaster. We posted the case on Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, the phones in the courthouse wouldn't stop ringing. By Friday, the mailroom was overflowing. 2 weeks later, I asked Inspector Quinn to call Marcus back to the courthouse. When he walked in that morning, he looked different. Not rich, not rested, but lighter. The crushing weight I had seen on his shoulders was gone, replaced by a cautious kind of hope. But as he approached the bench, I saw a flicker of that old fear return. He was twisting his hat in his hands again. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," I said. "Do you know why you're here?" He swallowed hard. "To be honest, Judge, I'm scared to guess. Did I do something wrong? Did the city appeal the decision?" "The city didn't appeal, Marcus," I said. "The tickets are gone. But your case caused a bit of a problem for us." I reached down and lifted a heavy plastic bin onto the bench. It was filled to the brim with envelopes. White ones, blue ones, cards with glitter, official-looking letters. "This is the problem," I said. "We can't sort it fast enough." Marcus stared at the bin. "What is that, sir?" "It's mail," I said. "For you." "For me?" He looked bewildered. "I don't understand. Who would write to me?" I picked up the first letter on the stack. "This one is from a woman in Ohio. She says she's a single mother of 2. She says she watched you talk about your lunch break, and she cried for an hour. She says she can't send much, but she wants you to have this." I pulled out a $5 bill. It was crumpled, like it had been carried in a pocket for a while. I picked up another. "This is from a man in Germany. He says he doesn't speak much English, but he understands what a good father looks like. He sent 20 euros. I picked up a card drawn in crayon. This is from a 7-year-old boy in Texas. It says, "For the dad who watches through the fence." There's a dollar bill taped to the inside. It looks like it came from a tooth fairy. Marcus was silent. He reached out and touched the edge of the bin, as if testing to see if it was real. "Judge," he whispered. "Why?" "Because you told the truth, Marcus," I said. "And the truth has a funny way of connecting people. You thought you were alone in that parking lot. You thought you were invisible. But millions of people saw you, and they didn't just watch. They responded." I signaled to Quinn. He walked over and handed Marcus a cashier's check. "We tallied up everything that came in over the last 10 days, I said. "The small bills, the checks, the online donations to the philanthropy fund marked for the lunch break dad. It adds up, Marcus." Marcus looked at the check. His eyes went wide. His knees actually buckled a little, and he had to grab the podium for support. $18,000, he gasped. The number came out like a question, like a prayer. $18,450, I corrected. "Tax-free. It's a gift. From the world to you." He covered his face with his hands. This wasn't the quiet weeping of the first hearing. This was a release. A dam breaking. This is a year of rent, he sobbed into his hands. "This is a reliable car. I can buy them winter coats. I can buy them Christmas presents. You can buy yourself some sleep, Mr. Cole," I said gently. "You can drop that third job. You can go home at night." The gallery broke into applause. It wasn't polite courtroom applause. It was raucous. It was joyful. People were cheering, but I knew money was just a bandage. It stops the bleeding, but it doesn't fix the bone. $18,000 is a lot of money, but for a man with 3 kids and no career path, it would eventually run out. I waited for the applause to die down. "Mr. Cole," I said, "put that check in your pocket. That's for your debts. That's for your family. But there is one more letter here. It didn't come in the mail. It was hand-delivered this morning." I held up a thick, cream-colored envelope. It looked official, expensive. This, I said, might be worth more than the check. Marcus wiped his eyes, looking up at me with red, swollen eyes. What is it, Judge? Do you know the heavy equipment union? I asked. Local 57? Yes, sir, Marcus said. I tried to get an apprenticeship there years ago, but I didn't have the certification. I couldn't afford the classes. Well, I said, opening the envelope, the union president saw your video. He saw a man who works 3 jobs on 1 hour of sleep. He didn't see a traffic violator. He saw work ethic. He saw grit. I pulled out the letter. He is offering you a slot in the apprenticeship program, I read, starting Monday. It's a paid apprenticeship, full benefits, health insurance for you and your children, and a starting wage of $28 an hour. The room went silent again. $28? Marcus whispered. That's double what I make now. And it's one job, Marcus, I said. One job, 9 to 5. Weekends off. For a moment, he didn't move. He couldn't process it. The money was a lifeline. But this was a future. I don't know what to say, he stammered. I don't deserve this. That's where you're wrong, I said firmly. You worked for this. You suffered for this. You just needed someone to open the door. The door is open, son. Are you going to walk through it? Time acts differently in a courtroom. Usually, time is a punishment. We hand it out in months, in years, in sentences. But sometimes, if you're lucky, time is a healer. 6 months had passed since the day Marcus Cole walked out of my courtroom with a cleared record and a union letter in his pocket. The winter had turned into spring, and the gray slush on the Providence streets had given way to green. I had heard a few updates through the grapevine. Inspector Quinn mentioned he saw Marcus's truck at a job site downtown, but I hadn't seen the man himself until a Tuesday in May. The docket was full that morning. I was halfway through a dispute about a zoning violation when the bailiff leaned over. Your Honor, he whispered. There's someone here to see you. They're not on the list. Tell them to wait, I said, not looking up. I have 10 more cases. I think you'll want to make time for this one, Judge, the bailiff said, a small smile playing on his lips. It's the Cole family. I set down my pen. Send them in. The doors opened, and for a second, I didn't recognize him. The man who walked in wasn't the hunched, gray-skinned ghost I remembered. Marcus Cole stood tall. His shoulders were back. He was wearing a clean flannel shirt tucked into new jeans, and work boots that were dusty but sturdy. He had put on weight, healthy weight. The dark circles under his eyes were gone, replaced by the kind of crow's feet you get from squinting in the sun or from smiling. But he wasn't alone. Walking beside him, holding his hands, were 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. They were scrubbed clean, wearing bright clothes, looking around the courtroom with wide, curious eyes. Marcus walked up to the bench. He didn't look terrified this time. He looked proud. Good morning, Judge, he said. His voice was strong. I hope we're not interrupting. For you, Mr. Cole? I said, taking off my glasses. I have all the time in the world. Who are these heavy hitters you brought with you? This is Leo. He's 10, Marcus said, pointing to the oldest boy. This is Sam. He's 8. And this is Mia. She's 6. Mia, the little one, stepped forward. She was holding something behind her back. She looked up at me, way up at the high bench, and then looked at her dad for reassurance. Marcus nodded. She has something for you, Marcus said. Mia reached up. In her hand was a small, framed photograph. The bailiff took it and handed it to me. I looked at the photo. It was taken on a baseball field. Marcus was kneeling in the dirt, wearing a team jersey that said Coach. The 3 kids were piled on top of him, laughing. There was no fence between them. There was no telephoto lens needed. They were together. I wanted you to see that, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Because of you, I'm not watching from the parking lot anymore. I'm coaching the team. I looked at the picture, then down at the kids. Leo, I said to the oldest boy, how's your dad doing? The boy looked at his father with a kind of hero worship that you can't fake and you can't buy. He's home for dinner every night, Leo said. Every single night. He makes spaghetti. It's not very good spaghetti, Marcus laughed, ruffling the boy's hair. But I make it. It's the best, Sam chimed in. And he helps us with homework. He used to be asleep when we got home. Now he's awake. That simple sentence hit me harder than any legal argument could. Now he's awake. And the job? I asked Marcus. Local 57, he beamed. I'm 3 months into the apprenticeship. I'm operating the backhoe now. The pay is, well, it's changed everything, Judge. I paid off the credit cards. I fixed the car. I even started a savings account for their college. Just a little bit, but it's there. And the lunch breaks? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Marcus grinned. I eat with the crew. Big sandwiches. I'm not skipping meals anymore. He paused, and the smile faded just a little, replaced by a serious, intense gratitude. Judge, he said, I drive past that intersection every morning, the one where I ran the red light. And every time I stop there now, I think about how close I came to losing it all. If I had met a different judge, if I had met someone who just followed the book, these kids would be in foster care right now. I know that. He squeezed his daughter's hand. You didn't just give me a break, he said. You gave me my life back. You gave them their dad back. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I looked out at the courtroom. It was silent again, but this was a reverent silence. Mr. Cole, I said, the law is a tool. In the wrong hands, it's a hammer that breaks things. But in the right hands, I like to think it can be a level. It can help build things back up. You did the hard work. You built the foundation. I just cleared the rubble. I looked down at little Mia. Mia, I said, do you know what your dad is? She shook her head. He's a fighter, I said. He fought for you when he was tired. He fought for you when he was hungry. You remember that. She nodded solemnly. Mr. Cole, I said, you are dismissed. Take your team and go get some ice cream. That's a court order. Yes, Your Honor, Marcus saluted playfully. As they walked out, the courtroom erupted. Not just clapping, people stood up. The bailiff, the clerk, the strangers in the gallery. They stood up for a man who, 6 months ago, was invisible to the world. I watched them go. I watched the way Marcus held the door for his kids. I watched the way they looked up at him. And as the heavy oak doors swung shut behind them, I looked down at the file on my desk for the next case. It was another traffic violation. Another number. Another statistic. But I knew better now. I knew that behind that folder was another story, another struggle, another human being waiting to be seen. I picked up my gavel. I felt lighter than I had in years. Call the next case, I said, and I was ready to listen. That night, long after the heavy oak doors of the courtroom had been locked and the lights in the hallway had dimmed to a security hum, I sat alone in my chambers. The building was quiet, settling into its foundations with the groans of old wood and stone. On my desk sat the file for case number 404, The City versus Marcus Cole. It was marked closed, but in my mind, it wasn't closed. I picked up the framed photo of the baseball team that little Mia had given me. I looked at Marcus's smiling face in the picture, and then I looked at the original citation list, the cold, hard printout that had demanded $5,000 from a man who didn't have $5 to spare. It terrified me. It terrified me because I realized how close we came to getting it wrong. If I had been in a hurry that day, if I had been distracted, if I had simply looked at the statutes instead of the man, the outcome would have been catastrophic. I would have banged the gavel. I would have imposed the fine. I would have suspended his license. And in doing so, I would have taken a sledgehammer to a family that was already cracked. I poured myself a cup of coffee, staring out the window at the Providence skyline. The city lights were blinking on, one by one. Behind every one of those lights was a story, a struggle, a secret. How many other Marcus Coles are out there? How many people are driving around this city right now, white-knuckling the steering wheel, terrified that one wrong turn, one broken taillight, one expired meter will be the domino that destroys their life? We call them offenders. We call them violators. But really, Most of them are just people trying to survive a game where the rules are written in a language they can't afford to speak. The system is designed for efficiency. It loves speed. It loves guilty pleas. It loves revenue. But efficiency is the enemy of humanity. Efficiency doesn't ask about lunch breaks. Efficiency doesn't care about kids waiting by a chain-link fence. Efficiency just grinds. That afternoon, I called my clerk, Quinn, into the office. "Quinn," I said, "we need to change how we do things." "Change what, Judge?" he asked. "The docket is moving faster than ever." "That's the problem," I said. "We're moving too fast. We're processing people like their inventory. From now on, when we see a high volume of tickets on a single individual, when we see a frantic pattern, we pause. We don't just read the charges. We look for the story." Quinn nodded slowly. "You think there are more of them?" "I know there are," I said. Marcus wasn't an anomaly. He was a symptom. The lesson of Marcus Cole wasn't about traffic laws. It was about the power of a single question. Why? It's the most important word in the English language, and it's the one we forget to use the most. Why were you speeding? Because I was late for job number 2. Why were you in the loading zone? Because I missed my kids. Why didn't you pay the fine? Because I had to choose between the court and the grocery store. When you ask why, you stop being a judge and you start being a human being, and that is when justice actually happens. I walked over to the shelf where I keep the letters, the thousands of letters from people all over the world who watched the video. I pulled out a random one. It was from a police officer in London. It read, "Judge, I've been on the force for 20 years. I've written thousands of tickets. I watched your video with Mr. Cole, and today I pulled over a young man for a broken light. I was about to write him up, but then I remembered Marcus. I asked the kid where he was going. Turns out he was driving his mother to chemotherapy. I didn't write the ticket. I fixed his light with some tape I had in the trunk and let him go. Thank you for reminding me that the badge is heavy, but the heart should be heavier." This is the ripple effect. One act of compassion in a small courtroom in Rhode Island didn't just save Marcus Cole. It saved a kid in London. It probably saved a single mom in Ohio and a struggling student in Brazil. Goodness is contagious. Mercy is a virus, in the best possible way. When people see it, they want to catch it. They want to spread it. But there is a darker side to this too. For every Marcus we catch, how many slip through the cracks? How many judges are just stamping the paper? How many systems are running on autopilot, crushing people under the wheels of bureaucracy? I sat back down at my desk. The city outside was fully dark now. I thought about the money people sent. $18,000. It was a miracle. But we shouldn't rely on miracles to fix broken systems. We shouldn't need a viral video to ensure a father can feed his children. Charity is beautiful, but justice should be standard. Justice shouldn't be a lottery ticket you win because you happen to get the right judge on the right day. I picked up my pen. I had a speech to write, not a ruling. A speech for the next graduation class at the law school. I knew exactly what I was going to say. I was going to tell them about the lunch break. I was going to tell them that the law is not a sword to strike people down. It is a shield to protect them. And sometimes the best way to protect them is to put the pen down, look them in the eye, and ask, "Are you okay?" Because in the end, we are all just walking each other home. So, here we are at the end of the file. Case number 404 is closed. The fine is paid. The debt is forgiven. And a family in Providence is sleeping soundly tonight because a few people decided to care. But before I close this book, I need to talk to you. Yes, you. The person watching this on a screen, maybe on your lunch break, maybe late at night when the house is quiet. You might be thinking, "That's a nice story, Judge, but I'm not a magistrate. I don't wear a robe. I don't have a gavel. I can't forgive a $5,000 debt with the stroke of a pen." And you're right. You might not have the power of the court, but you have a power that is infinitely more important. You have the power of the pause. Every single day, you are the judge in your own life. You preside over 100 little cases. The cashier who is moving too slowly, the driver who cuts you off in traffic, the neighbor whose grass is too long, the coworker who seems distracted. The prosecutor in your head, that voice that demands efficiency and perfection, wants to convict them immediately. It wants to say, they are lazy, they are rude, they are careless. But I am asking you to be the other voice. I am asking you to be the defense. I am asking you to pause, to take a breath, and to ask the question, why? Maybe that cashier is moving slowly because her feet are swollen from a double shift. Maybe that driver is rushing to the hospital. Maybe that neighbor is too depressed to mow the lawn. Maybe that coworker is a single dad like Marcus, running on 1 hour of sleep and a prayer. You will never know the whole story. You will never see the full file, but you can choose to treat them with grace anyway. That is the lesson of the lunch break. We live in a world that is obsessed with grinding. We celebrate the hustle. We applaud the people who never sleep, but we are breaking each other. We are creating a world where fathers have to starve just to watch their children play through a fence. We need to stop. We need to look up from our phones and look into each other's eyes. We need to build a society where the lunch break isn't a luxury, but a right. Where asking for help isn't seen as weakness, but as wisdom. So, here is my verdict for you. Go out into the world today. And when you see someone struggling, someone who is angry, or tired, or falling behind, don't judge them. Help them. Hold the door. Pay for the coffee. Ask, are you okay? And actually listen to the answer. Be the neighbor who writes the letter. Be the stranger who sends the $5. Because in the end, we are not defined by the money in our bank accounts or the titles on our business cards. We are defined by how we treat the people who can do absolutely nothing for us. Marcus Cole got a second chance because he met a system that listened. But there are millions of people out there who are still waiting to be heard. Don't wait for a judge to save them. You do it. Be kind to one another. It costs nothing, but it means everything. Case dismissed.
Where excuses collapse, lies get exposed, and the truth stands on trial. Real courtroom moments, raw decisions, and unfiltered justice delivered straight from the bench. No filters, no mercy, only facts.